and welcome to another episode of the Smokin' Tobacco Show. I am Matt Tobacco from Smokin' Tobacco and SmokingTobacco.com. I am joined once again with my friend Mr. John Carney. Tonight we have a very special guest with us. We have Mr. Scott Pearce from the Premium Cigar Association. Gentlemen, how are we?
Alive and kicking. Carney's better than all of us right now. He's got a steak and wine.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the view in Miami. I'm overlooking the bay. I've got steak. I've got wine. I've got a nice soap lined up for today. Thursday night's my night to be on the other side of the cigar world. So this is the Smoking Tobacco Show for me. It's like a little bit of a break. So I'll continue. This is like 4 weeks in a row I've been eating dinner. I try to eat before the show. Stuff just happens.
Yeah, it was funny because before the show, Scott and I were just kind of, getting ourselves situated, and I was asking John what he was doing, and it looked like he was working on dinner, and he mentioned something about he is waiting on a why am I missing the word?
Caviar.
Caviar. He was waiting for a caviar delivery, and I'm like, oh Jesus, excuse me. I thought I was living pretty good, but I'm not living as good as John Carney.
The challenge is, pardon me while I speak with my mouth full. The challenge is the caviar shipment might come in while we're on the show. So if my Wi-Fi would work throughout the building, we could actually do the caviar shipment on the show interview the delivery driver. But no, it's just from Whole Foods. Some inexpensive caviar. Something I'm doing on Monday for Hack and Gourmet.
Oh, nice. Oh, so this is part of the Planet of the Apps episode that we talked about before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Planet of the Apps coming on Monday. So we'll talk more about that as we get to the end of the show. But I'm really proud of the Planet of the Apps. That was probably one of my favorite covers that we've done so far for the show, and I'm excited. And we actually got a really great chef lined up for late August, early September too. We're going to be doing some bread baking on the show.
Make some pumpernickel.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the name we knock off movie covers, so the name of the show is going to be called Breadman: The Dark Rye, play on Batman. So I'm going to knock that cover off too.
So Scott, this is what I entertain myself with every week on the show. John's always got something going on, and it's always entertaining. It's also whatever he does have to talk about, it's always very educational too. I always learn something from John. There was one week, one of the biggest things that John has taught me so far on this show was like the strangest thing, and you probably know this, but the fact about John, remember you talked about the cellophane being paper based?
I don't know if Scott knows that.
Scott, do you know about the cigar cellophane that wraps around the cigars? It comes.
It's not plastic. It's a paper product.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only reason why I know that, to be honest with you, is because when Drew Newman was talking, we did an event at the townhouse for PCA, and we invited a bunch of people from Capitol Hill. We used to do that on a monthly basis until, obviously, coronavirus. And he was talking about the fact that with the American, it's that everything is 100% made in America. And he talked about the cellophane, and that was paper source, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
Yeah, I found it to be very interesting.
That was the first time I heard that.
I had heard it it was 5 or 6 years ago, and somebody said, "Oh, this plastic makes the cigar smell tastes like plastic." And I was with one of my sales reps, Terry Coleman, on the West Coast, California, and that was my California accent, by the way. It makes my cigar taste. That's probably the same accent I use everywhere else. But anyway, he told me the story about it. I'm like, I never knew that. Enough. Yeah, I was like, I never knew that till like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just a unique thing I don't think a lot of people know. And the main reason you can tell if it's paper or plastic is when it burns, it doesn't really smoke. It just kind of goes up in the air, and it doesn't crinkle. It just burns.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's a great part because that American cigar where everything's made in America, definitely unique to have that story. And so that's one of the things I hear people a lot. Like if you ask them some random cigar fact, like that's my random cigar fact is the cellophane's not cellophane. It's actually made out of paper.
Yeah, it's one of those
there
things.
You go.
Yeah, like I said, so there's always something that I learn from John every week that, and it's never like a major thing. It's always even something small like that. I'm always like, wow, that's like for me. I don't know, it's mind blowing. I mean, I like to learn like odd little information like that. So
that's what I call G Whiz. That's part of the G Whiz collection. So you just stuck that in your G Whiz collection. I got a lot of those. Like the first 100%. Ever contact solution was grape juice. There you go.
And I don't claim to like be an expert in things. It's just stuff that I've remembered and I've been around and I learned it the same way. So it's like, and it happens to me still weekly. I run into stuff like, man, I never even thought about it that way. Or of course that makes sense. So, this steak's delicious.
I was say, keep eating the brain food. What wine are you drinking with that steak?
I'm drinking an inexpensive wine that I found. It's called Carson Creek. I think it's actually a house wine of like a private label for Total Wine. But it's like $9. It's the best $9 wine I ever drank in my life. And it's almost as inexpensive as the boxed wines that I was drinking at the beginning of the quarantine, but the quality is significantly better. It's a cab from Paso Robles.
Yeah, Paso Robles is made by Camus. It's a very good wine, and yeah, it's for anyone who likes the Camus wine but doesn't want to pay that full top dollar. The Paso Robles, they have a blend that's really good, and it it's made by Camus, so and it's still pretty good quality. I've had it. Obviously it's a different blend, but it's still pretty good.
Paso Robles is actually the region.
No, but they have a bottle that they call like the 19-something Paso Robles, made by Camus, at Total Wine, I believe, and it's like $34.99. I want to say it's still like kind of pricey for a bottle of wine, but it's not that. What does Camus go for now? Like $80?
Yeah, about $80.
Yeah.
It's a super special.
Does it say Camus on the bottle?
It should. I mean, as long as we're talking about the same.
1858 Cabernet Sauvignon Paso Robles. Interesting. Yeah, maybe it's a private label made by Camus. Interesting. I'll have to try that out.
It might say Camus on the back, but I know I've seen it. It says made by Camus Vineyards. And actually, one of the Total Wine people there, when I was actually looking for it, he was like, "Oh, well, have you had this?" And he was like, "It's made by Camus, and they make it for us." And yeah, it was good wine. But
it's funny for people watching the show right now, Matt, because there's no real end in sight of us talking about wine and steak and things right now. So there's people watching this show and are like, "You guys got Scott Pearce, the director of the PCA, on the day that there's big news around the industry, and you guys are going to talk about wine and steak." And yes, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Well, you gotta build up to it. You can't just go balls to the wall, so to speak. You have to
pace ourselves, man.
Yeah, you gotta pace yourself. You gotta you gotta have some other conversation. We can't just be all cigars all the time. But yeah, I mean, people do bring up good, and I know what it is. Everyone knows what's going on. Everyone knows what came out today in the news. Everyone read it. Everyone heard about it. And obviously, Scott is the man to talk about this topic, and he is the man to ask questions to. Last night, John and I were on the Stickman Chronicles with our friend the Stickman, and Glenn Loop from the Cigar Rights of America was on.
Glenn was on. Yeah, he sent me a message to jump on, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to join last night on that short notice. Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think we were on there.
I was firing missiles left and right.
What's that?
I was firing missiles left and right, so it was probably good that you didn't.
Yeah, John brought his A game last night, I have to say. But again, we had Glenn on there, and obviously he's a wealth of knowledge, and he had a lot to say, and you were on there last week with us too, and I had fun talking to you guys. I wanted to get you on here as well, and I'm so glad that you joined us. And what a day! I mean, obviously this wasn't planned, but what a day to have you on the show. Sorry, I'm trying to fix something on the show and here. The FDA announced today that they are going to push back again the substantial equivalence deadline as they review how to regulate premium cigars. So
potentially.
Yeah. So Scott, tell us from your point of view, from the Premium Cigar Association, what does that mean for you guys, and what does that mean for the rest of us in the industry?
Yeah. So really, there's not a lot of clarity still, unfortunately. So what ended up happening is last night, right just before midnight, the Department of Justice filed this, and the course was essentially, so that's obviously the Department of Justice is the lawyers for the government. And so they filed this on behalf of the FDA. So if you go back to Judge Grimm in Maryland, who filed this when we had this, and they said, hey, we're not going to delay this. And his big target there really essentially was the PMTA process for vaping products coming to market. And didn't really care that there was anything else going to be caught in and all of that. So this was the Department of Justice, after we've been spending almost, I would say, 8, 9 months, our team divined a strategy where we were going to hit all levels of the administration. We hit the White House with the DPC, which is the Department of Domestic Policy, and then also the Economic Policy, White House Counsel, the Health and Human Services, and then the FDA. And we got listening sessions scheduled with the FDA. Unfortunately, coronavirus hit, but the SBA did a great job in still carrying that forward for us. And so we had this sort of strategic approach to how we were attacking all of this, and at the same time keeping up pressure with all the elected representatives, particularly Florida and Pennsylvania and some of these other key places where electoral college votes and everything else are huge in those states. So all of that pressure was mounting on this, and finally we got a lot of awareness in the White House, and to the point to where Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, was even asking questions about this, and so the pressure was starting to mount on the FDA to come up with something. We had word that they were supposed to be coming out specifically from the White House on this issue, and then we got word that it was delayed because the Department of Justice was reviewing something or other that would happen with it. Turns out that this is kind of what was going on, is that the FDA was utilizing the Department of Justice to make this filing. So what this ultimately means is right now that there is a potential pathway for this delay to actually happen. There is a potential pathway for more of a streamlined process for this to be done. The problem is that they still didn't define it within their filing, the Department of Justice. So for us right now, we're trying to get clarity, and hopefully that will be coming here within the next day or two, from lawmakers, and in particular, whether or not Department of Justice or FDA, or whether or not we can get clarity from either the White House or another department, is what exactly does this mean? What are the next steps for manufacturers? Because right now it's sort of lingering out there. Do we still need to file these SE? Is the September 9th definitively off? And if so, for how long? Is there a deferral process that we need to file? If so, what is that process? So it's still just murky, and that's what we're trying to do right now. Josh Habersky, our head of government affairs at PCA, and Mike Copperman, and some of their consultants at CRA, just pounding the phones all day today, calling people, trying to get answers. The Office of Legislative Affairs, I guess, did not necessarily communicate this very well to the elected officials, and so there were a lot of people that were kind of caught off guard by this. So we're all just trying to figure out exactly what happened and why on this. On the announcement in the Department of Justice filing this, we've obviously had our lawyers look at it and go through it all, and then we're just starting to ask the questions to get clarity on this, and then get decisions so that we can actually have definitive clarity for the manufacturers for these. I mean, as John knows, trying to do anything right now is about as useful as wading into dark mud with a blindfold on in the blackest of midnights right now, and trying to find your way through it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the cigar politics, it's a realm that I am getting myself familiar with. It's not something I, have a lot of experience with yet. I've been focusing I've only been really into cigars for the last few years, and I've, rapidly caught into the industry, but I haven't really gone into the politics. So this whole substantial equivalence thing has been that thing that has really brought me into it. It was something for me to focus on, something for me to kind of pay attention to within that realm of the industry, and I found it fascinating. And I have a lot of friends in the industry, and a lot of people I know, and everyone's explained it to me, from retailers to manufacturers, and people like John, who's a friend, who can explain it to me and stuff like that. But at the same time, I find it interesting to get the point of view, from someone like John as a manufacturer. Friends I have who are retail owners up here in the Northeast, who are heavily involved in this, and I just found it so fascinating when someone actually, I remember the day I said, well, what exactly is this? And someone said, basically you're gonna pay to file documentation, and I'm just watering this down, but you're gonna pay the FDA for every cigar to go through a substantial equivalence, and you're gonna have to file your paperwork and all of this, and I don't remember. So the it's on all cigars made after a certain year, right?
Yeah, so basically they came out with in 2016 what's called the predicate date, which said that any new product coming to market was going to have to be substantially equivalent. That's where the SE comes from, to all products that were on the market by February 15th, 2007. And the major challenge, and so when you take that into consideration and you understand what their goal was when they're talking about new electronic nicotine delivery systems, red vaping and some of these other stuff that they got going on, that's why that was there. When you look at cigars, they really haven't changed much since the 1600s, right? I mean, you have your basic blends of tobacco with some, with water and a little bit of, vegetable glue that holds it all together. And so just the varieties of tobacco leaves doesn't change that product fundamentally. So the challenge that they have is that they're ill-equipped, because when you're looking at cigarettes, there's a handful of SKUs that are on the market. But when you look at premium cigars, there's 50,000 plus at least. And so you're talking hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to do nothing in essence, because what they're really looking at is, again, they took a look at the youth vaping epidemic, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you notice, they at least acknowledge the fact that premium cigars heretofore have not had any issues with youth access. That is a low priority. But they still leave this floating out there that they want to have new research into this, right? This would be a third research initiative that's undertaken, when the first two initiatives demonstrate clearly premium cigars are smoked infrequently. They're not addictive by the rates of their usage, and there are no kids under the age of 18 that are smoking premium cigars. It just doesn't exist. Right. And so statistically speaking, they don't have anything to really stand on there. And so when they try to make this rule, Scott Gottlieb at least did us a favor, when the former director of the FDA at least did us a favor by opening up a rule to examine the premium cigar issue. And that's when we had, and that's 2018 is when we filed all these comments. And so the biggest challenge that we found when we were going through all of this is that, a very favorable administration in terms of deregulation, not even necessarily for the premium cigars, because Trump really doesn't care about premium cigars, but the administration is very much pro deregulation and, pro free market in that sense. So what they were really looking at when looking at all of this is, you have an insane amount of comments that came in from all of the antis and the health groups. And then you had a lot come in from us, but it was dwarfed by those health groups. So in order for them to come up with a policy is sort of this work in progress that we've been working on for several months with all of the administration that answers those questions. And so, it's a little frustrating that the FDA decided to go this route. But, I think that this is a response to the amount of pressure that I think that they were under, that we've been building up for these months.
Yeah.
I know it's a very long question, which I could have just said the date was February 15, 2007. But there's a lot that's involved in it.
Oh, no, and that's fine, Scott, because you know what? And this is why, this is great. I have you on to really not only answer the questions, but really give some information, because the fact of the matter is there's people like you guys who obviously know this stuff, and then there's a lot of people out there who don't understand what this is, and they don't know what's going on. There's people who don't even have any idea what's going on. I've spoke to a friend of mine in the business who told me that he spoke with fellow manufacturers, and they had no idea this was even happening. And how do you not? I mean, they didn't have their paperwork prepared. How do you not know? I mean, this is the thing. And even though consumers themselves are not manufacturers that have to deal with this, remember, it's the saying goes, the shit runs downhill. So at some point, this affects the consumer who goes into the shop buying cigars someday. So it is good to have the consumer be aware of what's going on. And we were on another show last night. Shout out to the Stickman from the Stickman Chronicles. Myself and John were on there, and Scott, you were on there last week. And last night, our friend Glenn Loop from the Cigar Rights of America was on there, and he was saying, like, it's good for the consumers to know about this, like, and vote for smoke, I believe was the saying. John, I don't know if you remember. He had the hat on. But no, he's right. I mean, be aware. Like, everyone should be aware, whether it's the Cigar Rights of America, the Premium Cigar Association, the CAA. It's it's something to know, because this stuff's going on, and like you said, this current administration, I'm not going to really get into like left and right on the politics, but when it comes to cigars and the current administration, you're right. This administration has been very pro anti-regulation and tried to free some things up. So, like we talked about on the show last night, if there's a time for you to make your voice heard, and let this administration know, like, hey, there is a situation going on where we're being overregulated, or there's the FDA is really trying to compare us to other tobacco products, and we're different, and this is the time, because come the election, we don't know what's going to happen after that date, and we don't know who's going to be in there, and then what happens. So
well, what's interesting is that the September 9th also coincides with anything that comes out after September is subject to congressional review because of the date in election. So let's just say President Trump is not reelected in November. Anything that comes out after September is subject to congressional review, once the administration turns over. And so that's kind of one of the other issues that we're kind of up against is that, we don't want to be in this endless death spiral of consistent review with the whims of an administration coming in. And that's why things by fiat or executive order are great for temporary relief. We need a permanent solution. We need permanent clarity so that the businesses out there know exactly what they can do. And I mentioned the health groups and the vast amounts of comments is so that all consumers know that if they do in fact smoker in this country to send in comments to counteract the vast amounts of health groups that are out there. They're acting off of information as if all tobacco products are made equal, and that's what they go off of. And so that's another thing is it's a call to arms for anybody who likes smoking a premium cigar. One, if they open this back up for comments, we need everybody's voice. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm being 100% sincere. When they're showing, tens of thousands of comments from the antis and thousands of ours, you start to get the idea of why we're having to try to navigate this minefield. And so if we had all 3 million plus cigar smokers out there sending in comments, it gives us a much better opportunity to have a stronger voice within whatever administration is in there.
Now, I know that over at the Cigar Rights of America, those guys have they've put out a template of I think it's like a couple different messages that for people to send to the president on Twitter. Does the Premium Cigar Association?
Yeah, we did that.
You have that as well.
Yeah. So we sent that out for both Florida and Pennsylvania. I funny got a question from somebody off Facebook. They're like, why just Pennsylvania? There's jobs all over the country this would save. And I said, well, Pennsylvania and Florida are key election states. And so we were, we were hoping and a little optimistic because we kept getting these noises from the White House that something was going to come out a couple weeks ago. And we were thinking, this is going to coincide with Trump's visit to Florida. We were even thinking and trying to say, hey, wonder if we can get some people like George Padron and Carlos Fuente and maybe Rocky and some of these others that are up there to talk about how much this is going to save businesses in Southern Florida. But it never came to fruition. Because of this, they got delayed because the Department of Justice stepped in.
Yeah. I mean, what a year in general, too. I mean, that happened, and then you have to take into account the whole coronavirus thing happened, which just it messed with everybody, and shut down parts of the industry. And I see John's over here laughing. I'm not sure why.
No, I'm laughing. Scott knows why I'm laughing.
Does he?
I got the gist of it.
Yeah. No, he's doing an excellent job, and you are I wouldn't say you're a politician because you're a director of a nonprofit organization, but you are a politician. Is some of Matt's question we're missing because there's a gap, and you have not missed a step, Scott. That's why I was laughing, because we couldn't hear what you were saying, but he was picking out what you were actually saying based off the words you could hear, and it was awesome. It's as if there was no gap to anything. It was beautiful. That's why I'm smiling.
Well, hey, it's nice to have a guest on there who's on his A game, and
seriously right.
I'm
pumped full of coffee right now. That's why.
I'm not used to having such a ready guest. A lot of times you see a lot of people stop and have to think first. But yeah, no, I mean,
you mentioned something, Matt. You said like, what a year. There's so much crazy stuff going on this year. What an outlier of a year in regards to social issues.
Yeah.
Look at the economy in the last 7 months. The huge swings in the economy, not just stock market. Stock market's a good, a good kind of gauge. It's for me like the stock market's
things.
Yeah, to me the stock market's like a weather report. It doesn't give you everything, and most of the time it's wrong. However, it's an idea of kind of what's going on out there.
Yeah.
But you watch the economy going up and down and recovering, and then taking steps back. And it's not recession. This is really a contraction of the economy going on right now. But there's unique things going on. Like stocks went nuts today, and then there's other parts of the economy that are having growths in terms of jobs, and there's really unique finite segments in niche parts of our country and the world of what's going on. The niche markets are starting to see, in my opinion, the niche type products and the niche industries, and maybe I'll pronounce it niche for other people that pronounce it niche. I'm not French. I'm American.
For those of us who parle le français.
Niche.
Isn't niche the
China.
name of a famous painter?
Niche.
Like Frederick Nietzsche or something like that?
But these
Frederick
markets,
Nietzsche
you know,
is
Yeah,
philosopher.
with this environment, you know, it's a really unique opportunity for these small businesses and there's opportunity out there because I mean, big businesses are getting freaking hammered right now, unless it's like, you know, retail and necessity type
Amazon.
products. Amazon's crushing it, Walmart's crushing it, you know, all these other businesses are, but this really small industries are if you're able to recreate yourself and take some opportunities right now, because there are some things getting done. And by the way, throwing it around. Yeah, it's just throwing it around, which is great opportunity for small business to get caught in on one of these things.
Yeah. When you look back, I think that much the same way that we have studied and continue to study and go into the Roaring '20s, and so much of that led up to kind of what happened with the crash and the run on the banks, and then obviously resulting into the Great Depression. You're going to see, I think, 30, 50, 100 years, they're going to be coming back to this, the lead up and everything else. I think this period is going to be studied, I think, the same way, particularly economically. And I wonder if history is going to judge our response, our meaning the political, the reserve, and everything else response the same way, I guess, in a lot of ways that the same response happened back in the late 20s, 1929, obviously, and leading in. It's a fascinating, you know, Milton Friedman has this great documentary where he kind of goes into this. You know, that's what he won his Nobel Prize for economics and his research going into obviously the causes of the Great Depression and coming out of that and everything else. And he's got a great documentary. I didn't even know this until I watched the documentary. But one of the banks that he uses as an example was First Security Bank in Salt Lake City, which is my hometown. And Eccles, who was the head of the First Security, his name is now on the football stadium there for the University of Utah. But he talked about the difference and was fascinating. This is just a little gee-whiz collection that we talked about earlier. So the one bank that first went down was the Bank of the United States. United States, you were eating steak, there you go, in New York, right?
My bank would never fail.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, it wouldn't. But what happened is that they needed cash, and none of the neighboring banks would lend them cash, and the Federal Reserve did not come in to give them the cash, so they closed down. There's a run on this bank, and that kind of started it. Well, when this happened, the First Security Bank in Utah, what Eccles did is he said, okay, for the first day, he told his tellers, I want you to take as long as possible, giving people money to hold off as long as possible to keep anything that was in there. So he was able to get some cash, and some other banks actually came in and gave them some cash that they had it on there because they were the largest in Salt Lake at the time, I think. And then the next day he said, okay, he goes, I want you to get people in and out as quickly as possible. I don't want anybody to see a line coming out of this bank at all. And they didn't. They got people in and out as quickly as possible. So it didn't look like that there was a run on the bank. And so that saved them and saved the kind of was going on there. So two different case studies there and kind of an approach to that. But that's kind of what precipitated all that. But I think that's what they're going to do is they're going to look back at us in 50 years, 100 years and figure out what the hell we were thinking, what the hell we were doing, a number of the missteps that we made, and perhaps maybe a few things that were right, hopefully, that we can all come out of this.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to look at this period of time, and we're going to get to look at it in small. But once you step outside of the current situation that you're in, and we can stop looking at it political level, we can really analyze it. There's a lot of things going on here. The social aspect in terms of how people are reacting to a pandemic, the decisions that are made in it. At the end of the day, you get to determine if the decisions were right or wrong. So you get to look at that. We're going to get to look at it on a small scale, but I think you're 100% right on a long scale. This last, I would say not even just this last few years, the transition from the last administration to this administration to when this administration ends to whatever the next one is, whether it's in in January, or if the administration continues, but the transition, we're really looking at a really unique 16 to 20 year period of time where there's, drastic changes and drastic decisions being made, an unprecedented amount of spending, and cash being created, which is a really unique thing to look at it down the road. And at the same time, China's doing similar things, in terms of the amount of debt they have. You have the two economic superpowers in the world, like leveraged with like 99% debt. We're running like a freaking Vegas casino over here.
or the way they used to run.
Yeah, yeah, and then until Steve Wynn like cheated on his wife and she took half his business and started running it fiscally responsible for once.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. No, next topic.
Yeah.
Wow, that was
Sorry to
escalated.
hijack that conversation there, Matt.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Like Ron Burgundy says, that escalated quickly. You know, I don't even remember where we were. Now I'm just like all shaken up.
Cigars. So what is everybody smoking? What like I don't know if Scott's smoking. He's at his house, but
Yeah, I'm at my house tonight, so I'll go out and
Yep.
smoke something after this interview gets done at a responsible hour.
I'm smoking.
we do a hard close. So we do end at 9:30. So what are you smoking, Matt?
I am smoking the San Cristobal Quintessence.
Nice.
Good smoke, a little smooth. This one and the what's the other one that they have that I really like? Is it the Experiencia? I want to say, I think is them. It's really good. Yeah, I really like the San Cristobal stuff. It's pretty good. It's it's from the Ashton guys.
Yeah.
I believe San Cristobal is made by my father.
It is.
For Ashton. So yeah, I got these at one of my local shops. I actually got it at an event with shout out to Lauren Ferraro, Miss Ashton. I'm sure both you guys know. She was there, hooked me up. Good stuff. But John, what are you smoking? I assume it's La Flor Dominicana, but
I'm smoking LFD 1994 tonight.
oh, I love those.
I had a guy that came in. He was the code enforcement officer for the building that we're in Coral Gables, and he came by to buy some cigars. So he bought. I wasn't trying to grease him or anything, but I did give him a 1994 to smoke. I was like, "You got to try this." And he was a big cigar smoker. He smokes 2 to 3 cigars a day. And I hadn't had a 1994 for a few weeks, which is weird because I'm in the office and I can smoke whatever I want. I've been smoking a lot of the Colorado Oscuros, but yeah, 1994, man, it's delicious. Every time I come back to it, I'm happy with it. San Andreas tobacco, I'm real fond of San Andreas. I like Mexican tobacco a lot, so it's right up my alley. And this is a good smoke after.
So you said the guy who came in was
Glen.
who? The building code guy? The building.
Yeah, whenever you do any new things to your building, he's the guy that approves them.
Oh, so he's the inspector.
Yeah. I don't know what his title was.
And
I mean,
he's a cigar
I knew what his
smoker.
title was. I couldn't give him a cigar. I felt like I would be greasing him. But if I just ignore and pretend like I didn't know who he was, then it was just giving a gift with purchase.
Well, was he previously a La Flor Dominicana fan or what?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So he
He
knew
got
his
really
way
nice
around.
windows too, so it was an easy thing for him. We were up to code and everything was good, and it's time to get some cigars.
Well, that's good. At least you helped out a good paying customer. I'm glad that worked out for you. But yeah, no, the 1994 is a great cigar. I actually have a box at my house right now. I think it's like my second or third box of them. They are good. I like having them around. Oh, go ahead.
So something that popped into my head, I was trying to remember it and I forgot. I didn't mean to interrupt, Matt.
But you did anyway.
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, he was kind of when I interrupted him, he was kind of cut out there a little bit. I couldn't see his mouth moving. But so here's something that's interesting to me. You mentioned hearing rumblings from the White House. Where does, and I don't want names, that's not important to me, but where does a small association like us, like our industry, what's the connection? Where the rumblings come from? Or is this
from those people that we were meeting with? I mean,
Yeah.
we heard it directly that Mark Meadows. I mean, look, we've got connections with folks because we utilize members like Rocky with Mario Diaz-Balart and the Newman family with Marco Rubio and others, and they're connected, right? They're talking and so it's connections. I mean, and so we hear from the people that we meet with, whether it's like I said, the Domestic Policy Council or the White House Counsel's office or some of these other groups. We have meetings with them and we were in regular contact with them. And so we would hear from them. And so what the challenge there is that it was like, okay, we hear something's coming, it's imminent. And then it was, well, we've got something, but the Department of Justice is looking at something, et cetera. So you should hear within another week or two. And then last night is when we got the filing. So that's kind of how that works. It's just a matter of establishing and facilitating and continuing to nurture relationships. Advocacy work is never one and done. It's basically just a never-ending marathon, and you always have to consistently go, and that's the long and short of it. That's why it's a slog, and that's why it takes a special kind of person to do it. I'm not one of those people, but thank God we got people like Josh Oberski and Patrick Anderson on our side, because they're the ones who really made this happen.
The unique thing too is Marco Rubio has made this a big point of his, and it's obviously part of the culture from where he comes from down here in Miami and his Cuban heritage. Yeah. What is his feel about accomplishing things on a legislative level? Does he think that's doable, or is it a matter of a multi-pronged approach where a guy like Marco Rubio tries to help rally, essentially rally his peers to, when it does come up, to not do either something else, or what does they feel is the correct approach with these things? Is it legislative, or is it legislative? We're trying to get laws passed, which the Congress is incapable of doing that. But is it that, or is the approach dealing with the current regulations? Because obviously we're doing both, but what's the end game? Is it legislative, or is it really just working with what the regulations are and trying to mold them to a better situation that's more of an understandable process?
Yeah, so it's kind of all of the above, to be honest with you. And so without bills or without anything that's going to be moving through Congress, you don't have a lot of gasoline in your engine to begin with, right? And so when those come up, and then you also have something that you can, to your point there, start rallying support. Senator Rubio has sponsored the S9 bill and others that does exempt premium cigars from the Tobacco Control Act in that legislation. Then we had HR 1854, was the latest iteration version of the bill sponsored by Congresswoman Kathy Castor, representative from Tampa. Same type of thing, right? So that gives a lot of legs to then what we start to go forward with. So then when we go and we get more people to sign on to that, that means then that we have more people that can call the White House. When we sit down with the White House, we sit down with the Health and Human Services, or we sit down with the FDA. The thing is that the FDA and the Health and Human Services, they've got to talk to the White House. If the White House is talking to them, they need to be able to have something to say, essentially. They can't just say, what's going on with premium cigars? Well, what do you mean? I don't know. I was just told to say that. That's, a stupid conversation to have. And so as we're meeting with them, we're providing and continuing to provide data. We're continuing to provide, well, here's this exemption, here's this, here's this, here's this. And they come back and they say, okay, well, we put pressure on, here's what we've heard. Where can we go with this? And so that's kind of where we're looking at it. And so at the end of the day, what we don't want is we can't get exemption, and that's that the big lofty goal of that being passed, right? The challenge is that's not like it's a simple thing of saying, okay, I'm going to go lose 30 pounds. I know exactly what I need to do for my diet and hitting the gym and doing X, Y, Z. It's not that type of goal. There are way too many things that are interdependent that you have absolutely no control over. So what we do have control over is the other side of things. How do we work with the administration? And I've been saying this pretty much since day one. I mean, our first board meeting, we were in there and everyone kept going back and forth about, regulation, non-regulation, regulation light, et cetera. And we as an industry, I think, have come into the lobbying game very, very late because there was never any need to, right? But then once this all got put in with the Tobacco Control Act, and kind of had to start to ramp up. But like so many industries, they can build a regulatory wall around themselves by defining what your regulation is and living within it. And then you effectively get regulated by what you've already claimed for yourself as far as your own rules are concerned. Motion Picture Association is one of the best examples of that, right? When the threats of Congress coming in to censor them and say what they could and couldn't show on screen and things like that, they created their own association, got Jack Valenti from Congress to come in and head that, and then said, okay, we've got our own system now. And so now you don't have government that really gets involved. I mean, FCC obviously has some say there, but the Motion Picture Association works in conjunction with that. I came from healthcare, where radiology did the same thing with their accreditation programs that was simply lifted by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services and plopped down 30 some odd years ago then, and then built from there. And that's what looks for radiology and within healthcare. And so it's the same kind of thing here. Is then that's what we're trying to work on right now as well. Okay, if you're not going to give full exemption, full stop, which is what we're still working on with Congress and with the House and the Senate, then we're like, okay, so how now where do we go from here? So now it becomes the conversation, it becomes the compromise, or it becomes the give and take. And that's where we're at right now. Is if it's not going to be this, then it's going to be this. And it's not going to be the full scale. You're going to have to do all of these substantial equivalence filings that are going to cost you hundreds of millions of dollars and put 90% of your businesses out of business. That was a nice shirt, by the way, on your picture.
Oh yeah, what happened there?
Matches your hat. I want to know. The caviar is there. So I
Caviar is
want to
here.
know though. Do you have the Apollo Creed sort of boxers that match all of that? That's what I want to know.
He has a lot of American flag, USA
I'm just saying it's the
apparel, and
Apollo Creed.
Of course I do.
I
I
know.
mean,
I
come
know.
on. Come
I just
on. Of
wanted you to
course
admit that live on
Of
air.
course I do. Of course I do. I'm not wearing it now, but of course I have it. Gentlemen, I'll be back with you in a few moments. I'm just going to leave you to yourselves. I'm going to mute here, and I'll be back up after I pick up my delivery. So
we don't get to see
I expect reports of delicious butteriness as you're
Oh, it's gonna be
describing
amazing.
caviar. Yeah, yeah. If you love butter and fish, then caviar is your thing.
Yeah, it's funny. He's always eaten like these exotic foods, and I'm always so intrigued because not only is it like interesting, just like like especially with the steaks, he's into all these special cuts of steak, and but
Yeah.
it's the way he describes it. It's like that's what makes it worth it.
Well, and there's certain people that the way that they eat the foods, like the way I've come around, a little bit older in life to eating tomatoes and some past each other, but the way my mom would eat tomatoes when I was a kid just made them look like they were the most delicious things in the world, right? And she would eat them like they were apples with a little bit of salt on them and just dive into them and just made them look so good. But I
Yeah.
always wanted to try them, even though I knew that they were going to taste terrible to me. There's just certain things, and that's the way when he was chowing down on that steak and sipping that wine, it just made it look like, man, I just eaten dinner too, and I'm not even that hungry. But I was like, oh my god, that looks like it's the best steak ever.
Imagine if he was to leave the cigar business and go into the food industry. Oh man, he'd rock it
He's got
so
the
good.
perfect name to go be a beef representative somewhere.
Oh, I know.
Carney's Carney.
Hi, I'm Jonathan M. Carney from the Carnivore Steakhouse. It's like, no, really? Yeah. That's essentially what I did. I mean, my last name really is Tobacco, and I just ran with it. I got into the cigar business, so I made it work for me.
Your last name was legitimately Tobacco?
Yeah, so yeah, it is. And everyone is always shocked to hear it, but yeah, it is. It's true. It is really Matthew Tobacco. And so that's why it's spelled a little. Everyone's like, "Well, you spelled it wrong." I'm like, "Well, that's how my last name is spelled. It's Tabacco." And so I came up with Smoking Tobacco about almost a year ago now, and it started very small. So I guess the backstory on me was I just made like people do. I made an Instagram to post my cigar pics, and then just I don't even know, but slowly but surely it changed, and then I had a website, and then I was writing reviews, and then I was writing news stuff, and then I just was doing all these different things. And then David Garofalo from Two Guys Smoke Shop, Two Guys
Yeah,
Cigars.
your neighbor up there. Yeah.
He's been a mentor to me, and I made my first appearance on a podcast on the Cigar Hacks podcast. So shout out to those guys. They always watch. So I want to shout out to those guys. They're a great following. I love those guys a lot. And I was on their show, and it was my first time doing a podcast, and I was like, this is actually not that bad. Like, I could just sit here and talk. So then I just happened to be at the Two Guys Smoke Shop, and as you know, Dave has a podcast studio over there for the Cigar Authority and all that. So
Yeah.
and he has the Assholes show, and he was like, hey, so do you want to like go up on the Assholes? And I was like, oh, okay. So I just went up there and I did a show, and he's like, what do you think? I'm like, it's good. He's like, you want to stay on there? And I was like, okay. And I started doing the Assholes, and I really got a feel for it. And then when everything shut down and everyone was doing this online, Carney and me were just video chatting just to hang out and smoke and just just virtually connect. And we decided let's just stream it to Facebook and see how it goes. And it was fun. And so now we have a Smoking Tobacco show, and we're here every week. So it's always changing. And the more I do my Smoking Tobacco stuff, the more I get into the industry and the more I learn. And like I said before, like, I've been kind of all over the place with the industry stuff, but getting into the politics part is a newer frontier for me.
Yeah.
So like I said, I've had Glenn on the show. You have you on the show, and this is really cool. And I actually really love this, and I love how we're doing this because it's a whole nother side of the industry, and it's very important because I don't think people realize just what is at stake here. I think people they don't have any clue. They go in their smoke shop, they buy whatever they buy, they go home, they smoke, and they're like, I smoke my cigars. I like Padron 1926. Well,
right.
What if I told you that your Padron 1926s someday either are going to be triple in price, or you won't be able to get them, or X, Y, and Z? Something could happen. You can't go down to your spot. All these things that people just don't realize, and that is what people like you and the Premium Cigar Association and all the other cigar associations are really here for. You are the voice of the people. And like you just said, I love how you brought up that comparison to the Motion Picture Association. It's kind of, and like the Stickman was saying, he actually commented on the show when Glenn was on the show, and he in the comments he said, what about policing our own industry? And I feel like that's kind of like what you were alluding to there is, you make your own establishments that oversee our industry, so that way the government doesn't have to go and poke their nose into it and be like, well, we're going to tell you what to do, even though we have no idea what you do.
Exactly. And we kind of got to that point to where effectively the White House is like, okay, we're talking to the FDA, tell us what to tell them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we, and that's one of the toughest parts about, I think, the growing pains of being a fairly young industry in terms of lobbying is still trying to figure out how a lot of the industry partners all come together. Mostly, obviously, the companies and all come together and working together. And so for a lot of industries that are out there that even maybe younger than the cigar industry, but have been lobbying from, as heavily as they have for 50 or some odd years, that is all kind of figured out for them. And so so it's a lot easier for them, I think, in certain ways, to be able to make more definitive progress. I guess I'll say that with a little bit of a disclaimer of saying we are making good progress. It's just that, I've been doing this now a little about almost 2.5 years with the Premium Cigar Association. I've been doing it over 20 years with other associations. And so it's just, I'm somewhat of an outsider coming to the cigar industry component of the lobbying. And so just kind of seeing kind of some of these things, trying to get up to speed in the same way that other industries have been doing it for so long. And that's why I bring up some of these other industries because of how they've done that. And I know that the ideal situation would be, well, let's get a bill passed and let's just get full exemption. And it's really easy, obviously, when talking amongst ourselves, especially if it comes to Tobacco 21, right? And talking about that and saying, well, by God, if you could go fight for your country, you'd be able to pick up and smoke a cigar. But politics and public policy doesn't work that way. There are literally, tens, if not hundreds of millions of people that all have varying degrees of interest in whatever this particular topic is. And there's lots of interest groups that are out there with money and resources, et cetera, that are also fighting from their perspective that they also feel is equally firm in the foundations of their convictions as we do with ours. And so it's never just about simply, stating a simple belief that you feel confident in. That's not necessarily how public policy gets made. So it's very much, like I said, it's a continuous marathon, and it's a continuous aspect where cultivating those relationships really, really helps us, because when it comes time, we know that we can turn to folks that will actually carry some water for us or carry the message for us, like they have. And we've got a lot of fantastic representatives like Posey in Florida, Rushenthaler up in Pennsylvania, that have been fantastic for us. And if we do get some kind of permanent relief, those two guys are going to have to be thanked a lot by our industry, because those guys have been phenomenal for us.
Now, another thing,
and along with Rubio and Castro and amongst a bunch of others as well.
Another question I had, and I think it's one that a lot of people might be curious about. Obviously, a lot of people in the industry, who do follow along, they know about the PCA, being a little short on the staff right now. And
yes.
So an interesting question that I had is, how does an industry like yourself, where you downsize that much, still have that strength to keep on these fights every day? Because the government and all that stuff, that doesn't stop. Now, obviously,
Right.
the PCA has to make adjustments to the times. I understand that. I'm sure there's people who've spoken against it, but I understand you have to do what you have to do. But having said that, like I said before, these things, they're going to keep on trucking every day. So how do you keep that fight going with that smaller team?
Yeah, so that's something that for the short term, that's what Josh and I are focused on, and Josh and I, we last night midnight this was coming, we texting back and forth and hitting the ground running, and doing it. In fact, it was funny because I did the post, and however it got updated when we sent out our press release today, there were like duplicate copies of this stuff going on, because again, you're trying to do a bunch of things at once and get stuff done and jumping on calls and everything else. So right now, we're streamlined as much as we can and focusing on just top priorities of what we can do, and focusing on that. We are fortunate, at least in the timing right now, is that most states, there's a handful that are in special session, but most states right now are not in session, and so that does give us some time right now to we've got a plan in place. We are now working directly with Glenn Loop from Cigar Rights of America now. We're putting together an entire state advocacy proactive approach that we're going to be launching at the end of this month. We're going to be meeting with states individually on members-only webinars where we're going to talk about these specific. We know that there's probably about upwards of almost maybe 24 or so states that are out there that have either tax initiatives or bans. We just got some really good news on California. They just held their session on Tuesday, and up until about 10 or 11 o'clock at night there, but ours was going until about 10 o'clock. Spent 5 hours arguing our issue. And so Josh and I were working with the consultant we had out there on a consistent basis. And there's groundwork that was laid, obviously, by previous folks at the association. This consultant did a tremendous job, and we also got to give a big shout out to our members in California. We ran several campaigns, and they came out of the woodwork. We absolutely peppered the representatives out there with letters and with calls. We had our members calling in, providing testimony about their shops and what this was all about. We were the only organization that was mentioned by name in the testimony from the chair of the health services where this went. And premium cigars were specifically brought up, and pipe tobacco were specifically brought up as exempted from this bill, 793, I believe it is, in California. And this is kind of where it gets ridiculous. And this is kind of why our people came out the way that they did, because it would have literally shut down all stores in California. But it basically says you can't have a characterizing flavor. And the way that it's interpreted, and the way some health groups try to use this type of language, and this is why this is so important as well. So anybody listening, when this comes up again, because it will in other states, we need everybody's participation the same way we had in California. But what this means is that if you, Matt, are out there and you say, look, this has notes of cocoa, this has notes of whatever the case may be, it's got some nuttiness to it or whatever, some floral notes, that would make that cigar illegal based upon the language that they had in there.
Right.
And so that would literally take every cigar off the market. And so that was our case, and we made it, and they accepted it, et cetera. And so and exempted it, and specifically mentioned pipe tobacco as well, that whatever constituents they were talking about, that pipe wasn't an issue because there's no youth access. And so look, they were looking at obviously small machine and mass-made flavored little cigars, and then also the vaping. And so that was what their target was. And so we were able to get our own carve out, and we were specific in that. So Josh and I are basically just, and Josh is really taking on a lot here, and Josh is doing a tremendous job. But we realize that we're going to need to pool some resources, so we are with this. And we're guardedly optimistic that as we head into the next couple of months, we get a few things aligned and we can get back to kind of more full steam ahead. But particularly into 2021, that's why we want to be proactive right now, because if we have all of these things in place and we're working in conjunction with members, we get more state associations established and involved, we will exponentially grow our influence in all of these states and start stemming the tide, because the tax man is definitely coming for your cigars next year, and we're going to fight like hell to stave off all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I will, and I think that it's worth noting, anyone who talks to someone, like you and anyone, Glenn with the Cigar Rights of America, it's a thank you. I'll tell you thank you, for what you do for the industry. I mean, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that, stuff like that, like the taxes, that that comes out of their pocket. It's people like you who stand there and say, we're going to fight for this so that you don't have to pay those taxes. And it's something that more, real, devoted cigar smokers, everyday cigar smokers, really should understand and realize, because it's people like you. Like I said, you guys are very important too. I mean, you have the manufacturers who make your cigars. You have the retailers who get it to you and give you the service. But you are just as much of a part of that equation, because you guys are the ones who are dealing with, okay, now there's all the regulations and the legal and the political. You guys make things happen for people. So, without you guys, who knows where the industry would be? They probably would have taken our cigars away by now. But
no, I mean, it's good that the leaders of the industry, 12, 13 years ago did kind of start establishing these frameworks. But I will say this, I said this just on Sunday night when I was on another program with Bear Duplessis, and I said, look, basically think of this as a stool. You got manufacturers and you have retailers, and we need consumers as the third leg of that stool. I said, but there's a fourth leg, which is the cigar mediator with those, and I said you got to play a very important part, because you cannot. I mean, with spirits, there's the people that are out there that do the reviews, and with the wine, everything else. No other tobacco product out there has the type of interest, the type of hobbyists, the type of aficionados that go through this way. It proves the message of why the premium cigars are so different, and it's a very important part because that information, that connection between manufacturer to consumer, and then the retailer to consumer through manufacturer as well. If we have those four legs of that stool, it becomes very hard for the winds to push that stool over. But if it's just two legs trying to sit there and balance, it becomes very difficult for that stool to withstand any pressure.
Yeah. And again, I think that and this is why I'm really glad we had you on the show, because to really explain this, get all this out on the air. Because I mean, I have my own viewers who, and I've said this before, maybe they they don't know all this. This is really important information, really, and I'm gonna keep on stressing it throughout the show. This is really important information, like you said, and it's all about the pressure. You keep the pressure. You hold it back. Whether like the tobacco 20 thing, the 21 thing came through. That's I remember the day it went into effect. Up in New Hampshire it was 18. And I remember the day that it became 21, it was like there was under 21 regulars that were coming into my local smoke shop, and they were being turned away, and it was like, what do you mean? Like, oh, it's 21 today, and it's like it's not the retailer's fault, it's not any of the industry's fault, but it's a slap in the face to that consumer.
It is, and the challenge with that is we tried to fight. We fought it back in New Hampshire. It became a federal law, right? And what ended up happening, that was a concerted effort. And now that it's been announced that Nat Sherman is being sold, I don't really want to parse my words here, but that's all Altria is doing. That was a concerted effort by Altria after they bought their stake in Juul, that they did this across the board because that was one of the measures that they had agreed to in order for them to do what they were going to do with some of this other vaping laws that they were doing.
Yeah.
So that was a concerted effort. I mean, they play on a different level. I've heard stories of them that I won't necessarily say on the air because it's more, I guess we'll call it rumor. But they play on a different level. They play on a different level, and when it comes to lobbying, than pretty much anybody else that's out there.
Well, it's because their lobbyists are in-house. Altria is 27 times the size of the entire premium cigar industry just on their own. They have their own legal staff. I'll tell a unique story. I was at TAA one time, and this was I think it might have been 3 years ago, but it might have been 2 years ago because I think you were there, Scott. And it was right when some regulatory stuff was going on about the warning labels. And in the room were companies that were owned by Altria, by Scandinavian Tobacco Group, and then you had Imperial Tobacco Group with Alta. It's Imperial, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you had Imperial in the room, and you had people with titles of president in the room. And they were putting warning labels on their boxes. And at the TAA roundtable discussion, or deep dive, they called it, there was questions being asked about warning labels and what should we do. And some of the answers from the state lobbyists, not the state lobbyists, there was no lobbyists there. Really no association presence besides, I think you may have been there, or Matthew DeGali at the time was there.
It's probably Matt DeGali, which would have preceded me by a year.
Yeah. So there was a question asked about what was going on and what is the guidance on the warning labels. And nobody asked the question, because at that point in time, we essentially had big tobacco in the room. Nobody asked the question, including myself, because I wasn't going to get after the presidents of other companies in that setting directly face to face. I prefer to do my talking behind their backs on Facebook. It's not the place to bring that up. You know what I mean? It's just not the place. But nobody brought the question up about warning labels to the people that were actually in the room putting warning labels on their boxes.
Right.
And so the reason I bring that up is, one, that was a missed opportunity, but that's not what it's about. Just have professional lobbyists. They have professional lawyers. At the beginning of this, I had friends that were involved, acquaintances and friends from the industry that were involved in these businesses. And I would ask them, not for legal advice because they weren't lawyers, but I was like, what's the recommendation they're giving you on warning labels? What do you think I ought to do? Well, this is what we're doing, and this is not legal advice, but this is why I'm doing it. Which is great information to have, but you said they're on an entirely different field because they're playing their own games, whether they want to admit it or not. I mean, they're just doing their own thing. because they can. Like Altria can do whatever the hell it wants because they own the Center for Tobacco Products. And people are like, oh no, they don't. Well, yeah, their settlements, their taxes, they own
They
it.
fund
like,
it.
yeah, like absolutely. It'd be like me being like, I don't work at Disney World, but my last name's Disney, and I own 99% of the stock.
Right.
Guess what? We do what I want to do because I'm funding you. I own it.
Yeah.
Or it's a situation of I have somebody that manufactures my cigars. We don't at LFD, fortunately. So someone that manufactures my cigars, I'm like, they own you. They're like, oh no, they own the person making the cigars is dictating what you're doing because they can really change what's going on. So that what if you control all the ingredients, you then control what goes out on the plate essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean 100%, and that's that's the difficult part, right? Is again, small niche industry, still very very young within the lobbying game, right? The good news is that we've been told we got a lot of overlapping interests with some good other industries like the oil industry, and so we've done a cigar series with some of their lobbyists that they have. And they tell us, and we meet generally, out a bunch of different lobbyists at these events. But people like cigars, and they like cigar events. It's new, it's fun. People enjoy cigars, and so not only that, but what we've been able to kind of do in terms of the various strategies we've been employing now for the past few years, they've consistently told us, hey, you guys punch way above your weight class. For an industry our size, we really do. And for the fact that we got the attention of the White House and the chief of staff and everything else speaks to the work that not only that we've done as staff, which again, our staff does deserve a lot of credit, and our consultants, but also the volunteers. I mean, the amount of hours that some of these guys, like the Rockies and the Padrones, that put into it, and our volunteers on the board, and the amount of hours that they put into it, particularly our executive committee, the hours on the calls and visiting these different representatives and everything else, it really speaks to their work as well. Starting with going as far back, with Craig Cass has put in a ton of time, John Anderson's put in a ton of time, Greg Zimmerman with the states, they put in a ton of time away from their shops in order for us to do these types of things. And so it's all of those efforts are all combined, and we do punch way above our weight class, and we don't ever intend on stopping. We intend on continuing to go after the heavyweights. And
don't you think part of that is, Scott, too, because we're actually, at the end of the day, we're a small industry, but we're actually coming with facts, and there's not a lot of supporting evidence on the opposite side in regards to these products to counteract it and fight it. The opposing side and the opposing argument from other associations, Heart Association, Lung Associations, and whatnot, are the same things that they were saying with cigarettes, and that's just not factually true. So I feel like we punch harder because we have facts.
Yeah, that's only a recent development, to be honest with you, those facts with the research. And that actually did not necessarily result in the decision being made that we wanted to last night, right? They still want to research this out even further because they haven't gotten the answer that I think that they really want here. The thesis for the Center for Tobacco Products, by the way, is that lighting a tobacco leaf on fire is bad for your health, full stop. That's their thesis. And so now you would think that the burden of proof is on them because you cannot prove a negative, right? And so we've got data that can take that hypothesis then and say, well, I can kind of disprove your hypothesis here because we can see obviously the research into premium cigar smokers, et cetera. The challenge with that, though, is that unfortunately this industry lost the narrative 30 some odd years ago with the Truth Initiative and others that all lumped in tobacco meaning cigarettes. So now all tobacco smoke is evil, right? So that narrative, as far as the public mind is concerned, is gone. It's not about facts. It's about perception. And that's the biggest problem that we have. And that's why we've been doing the education series at the townhouse that we've been doing, is to educate people on what the industry is all about and why it's so different. And that's why I say the media component to our association, or to the industry rather, is so important, because it continues to try to change the perception of what this particular segment of the tobacco industry is all about.
And that's what I mean by facts. It's when they do research it, the information turns out to be factual. At the end of the day, like where this doesn't have the same impact as a cigarette. This isn't the same as just lighting a tobacco leaf on fire. The nicotine that's in here is natural. It's not added for its addictive purposes. Sure. It's there for its flavor potential. That's just what I feel when you talk to people about I mean, I've had discussions with family members of all ages, and they're like, the older range talks about nicotine because that was said, oh, nicotine's bad. I'm like, well, it's no worse than caffeine. It's actually significantly less worse for you than caffeine.
It's related to caffeine. You got all your nightshade plants have nicotine. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, the thing is it doesn't matter though, because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, they're already starting. It was funny. So speaking of that TAA, I remember having a conversation about marijuana smoking at my first TAA with a couple of folks, with Phil Ledbetter and Joel when we were there. And we were just talking and saying, look, they're just now starting to do research on the effects of marijuana smoking, and they're starting to see that it's even worse on lungs. I just saw a report recently about all the effects on hearts that marijuana smoking is having, particularly on those that have been smoking marijuana for a long time. And the problem is that marijuana was illegal for so long. All of the research all pointed to the benefits and none of the deleterious effects of marijuana smoking. And so so factually, obviously, if you think about it, you're taking smoking constituents into your lungs regardless. It's mind altering, right? There's a lot of things out there that if you were to logically look at it, and there are some research that exists out there, it doesn't matter because the narrative has now been framed and understood, particularly this generation now, is marijuana is so beneficial. It's, I mean, you know, drinking and driving and all these other bad effects from alcohol, et cetera. And that's another one, right? We have a ton of evidence about alcohol, but yet you can still go and get Cool Whip flavored or whipped cream flavored vodka. Who is that targeting, by the way? I don't see anybody protecting kids from whipped cream flavored vodka out there, but there sure as shit isn't people that are out there that love vodka and love their martinis that are using that stuff, right? It's clearly geared towards kids, but they're not going after that either. And so well, yeah, I think you were getting the caveat when we were talking about this, but what's simple and straightforward for us, where we feel we stand on principle, the other side feels that they stand on principle too. And so at the end of the day, it really is this grand maneuverability, kind of tap dancing through a minefield, especially where we're concerned because we're tobacco, in order to get to a result that we can thrive in and that they can live with. That's what we want. We want a result where we can thrive and they can live with it. We don't want a result where we have to live with it and they thrive.
So, gentlemen, I hate to really damper this discussion, which is a great discussion, and I knew this was going to happen. There's just so much coming out, and it's great stuff, and I hate to change it, but we have two segments that we do have to hit as we get towards the end of our show tonight, and one of them is John Carney's going to do his soap review. So Scott, buckle up because this is John's time to shine.
John, I just want to. Do you make the soap, John? This isn't like a
I haven't started making the soap yet.
Fat from a plastic surgeon's office, are you?
No, I haven't started actually making the soap yet. But we'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. But we got a special soap on deck tonight. We're going to do it from my kitchen this evening. We're not going to do it outside. You can see here my dishwasher is actually broken. So I'll be playing dishwasher tonight. But we're going to wash here. The big thing is I'm going to get this water warmed up quick. But the soap we have tonight is one that can be found pretty much anywhere. For the ladies that watch the show, I know ladies tend to be big fans of Target. This is readily available at Target, most grocers.
Did you just say Target?
Target.
Yeah, I have. I did. It's the French. It goes with niche. So we've done a lot of craft soaps, is what I've been calling in the last couple weeks. Last week we did the Paul Mitchell Tea Tree, which was excellent. Personal favorite because of the tea tree oil. And then I did some craft soaps up in Maine. Craft soap, Scott, would be homemade soaps. So generally from someone's kitchen or from a craft shop, a high-end soap boutique out there. But today we're going to be doing, we got some warm water going. That's going to turn it down a little bit. But today we're going to be doing Mrs. Meyer's Clean Day hand soap. And this is our first, this will be our very first.
We got that at the office, my friend.
Yeah, it's great soap. This will be our very first liquid soap.
That's good stuff.
Done. This is made with olive oil and aloe vera, and this is the lavender scent. Now, I will say the lavender scent is definitely the substantial smell I'm smelling here. I don't get much of the olive oil, and fortunately, I'm not a big fan of the smell of aloe vera because it tends to be overpowering. So I've used this soap before. But some other hand sanitizers and things that I've used, when they have aloe vera in them, I don't like washing my hands with that, or I don't like using that because I tend to eat with my hands quite a bit because I eat tapas style. I'll eat appetizers quite regularly, or I'm eating on my own where I can just shove steak in my mouth. I don't like that smell of aloe vera. So This soap I'm really interested on. I don't smell any of the olive oil. I do see some of the color to it. It's got kind of an olive oil color, but I'm not really smelling any aloe vera. But this is liquid soap. We're going to do 4 squirts. So we got 4 squirts going there. I want to give it a good thing. The big thing with liquid soap is the coverage with it is immediately noticeable. Now, I'll be honest, this is greasy. This is kind of a greasy soap right off the top. You can get in the olive oil. You're also getting a lot of froth and suds. I know it's a bad camera with the lights here, but I'll try to flip on another switch here.
What is it that they add to soap in order to get that? Because that's an additive so that people, it's a mental thing, right? It's such a fun business lesson. I remember doing this case study in business school where they talk about where they add the stuff in order to make it foam because it was a psychological thing for consumers to know that it was working.
Well, actually, that's a good
so
point.
I can read through what's in here and we can determine which one it is. I'm going to assume it's one of the items that I have no idea what it is, such as cocamidopropyl hydroxysulfatine. That's one chemical. It might be sodium methyl 2-ol sulfate. It could also be, it's not Lavandula augustafiola, which is the genus and species of. But I would assume it's probably some sort of it's probably more of a cocamidopropyl homolympatine that causes that, I would say.
So actually,
but this one, I'm in the soap review, guys. No, stop. You know I. Like I'm trying to get the review done. So here you go. You look. There's grease on this. You can feel grease. You can feel the oil. So that's cool. And it's got kind of it's lathering really well. So we're getting a lot of white here, but it's not sudsy. It's definitely just lather. It's creamy, to be honest with you. It's more of like a kind of like a hand cream situation in the feel. So we got that going there. The suggestion on the bottle is 30 seconds of lathering, but we're going under here now. I will say immediately upon putting this underwater, it's washing away. That oily texture is going away. So whatever that thing that's causing that lather is probably the same chemical. Have it go away. So right now it's kind of a drying effect. I'm feeling my hands dry a little. The scent was, I'd say on the scale of 10, the scent was probably a 7 when it was on the hands. It did waft a little bit through the room. After washing, the scent's probably a 3. There's a little bit of shine here, but it's definitely, I feel like I have some grip here. It's not super greasy after. And we're just going to wipe off with some paper towel here, a couple pads. And also, the environment I'm in is changing. I got my windows open. It's humid down here in Miami, so it definitely changes how the hands dry. Another feel that I get off and on with soaps is that tightening feel at the end. I do feel some tightening. The reason I like that tightening is it makes me feel like it's clean. Whether that's true or not, who knows? I'm not a scientist. I'm just a soap reviewer. But yeah, so this is a nice soap, not overpowering scent. I feel like I could grab something and eat it after and not be overpowered. The Paul Mitchell last week, I think I gave it a 7.9. Because I said I love tea tree. I wish they had a tea tree soap, but I'm partial to Mrs. Myers here. I've always enjoyed their soaps. I think they're good. I wish they had a tea tree soap like this, which they do, which is what I intended on getting, and I had to use the bar soap because the place I get my haircut didn't have the one I wanted. But I tend to enjoy liquid soaps better than bar soaps. It's less effort. I feel like 50% of the job has already been done for you because it's a liquid, which is huge. So this is Myers Clean Dry. I'm going to go. Wow. This is readily available. This is made by a big company. It's a big soap company, the Caldria company. Man, it's a better soap experience than the Paul Mitchell last week overall. It's a better experience. The tea tree oil takes it over the top for me because I really like tea tree. It gives you that tingle. But I'm going to go 7.9 on this too. 7.9 on the Mrs. Myers liquid soap. The craft soaps got a little bit of a bad rap just because of the experience. These are genetically modified, and maybe genetics isn't what it's about. But again, I said I'm not a scientist. I'm a soap reviewer. But these are made to be high-performing products. Physical appeal, visual appeal, scent. So you're getting all the senses on this one. So 7.9, Mrs. Myers Clean Day, Aroma Therapeutic Household Products, lavender scent hand soap with olive oil and aloe vera. 7.9.
Good score. I mean, the only thing I
Very
just want to
nice.
say, the
It's
only
a
thing,
great soap, man. It's a great soap.
the only thing I wanted to add in there, and I wasn't trying to take over the soap review, is just when you mentioned how, well, when Scott asked if they added something to make it more soapy, I immediately thought of, and I'm not going to mention any names, whether you guys do or not, that's your business. But without mentioning any names, there are some cigars out there where the wrappers have a little bit of an extra ingredient to them to allow them to be a little bit more smoky. And I was just going to try and tie that into the soap and the cigars, but it's okay. I interrupted the soap review. I apologize.
You always try to hijack my story.
But
I was the one who hijacked it. I didn't know. I didn't know it was sacred. I'm sorry. This is my first time on this. My first time in soap review.
So this is one of my favorite things about the show is the soap review because it's so out there, it's so different. Everybody has a similar reaction that you do. Like it's like, oh, this is my first time. I didn't know, and it's okay. It's and every time we do it, we want it to feel like it's the first time. That's what the soap review is about. It's got to feel like it's the first time, and eventually these are going to be put up on the Smoke and Tobacco website, and I will have a little bit more detail in it. However, I like the fact that it feels like the first time every time.
Is that a Foreigner song? Am I missing that? That's a Foreigner song, right? Feels like the first time?
Yeah, no, he's
All
right.
right.
Yeah, you're right. It is. Yeah, and we would play it, but we don't have it, and
Yeah,
we
no,
try
that's
to
all right.
we try not
Don't
to
own
play.
the rights to it.
We don't own the rights to the music.
And
either.
we're already kind of skimming the edges of copyright infringement with the theme song, but we think we're all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
all
think-
right.
I think
Yeah,
we're
and
doing
I can't hit the high notes anyway, so there's no chance I'm trying to sing it for you anyway.
No, absolutely not. I don't think any of us can. But it is time for our sports segment. It's the end. Let's get into the end of the show. We're going to talk sports a little bit. Brought to you by Platinum Nova Cigars. Platinum Nova, make Nova big. Delicious stuff coming from those guys. I love it. Platinum Batch Robusto is one of my favorites. So
Yes, mine too. It's a great breakfast cigar.
it is. It's fantastic. I love those. I always keep a bundle in the house.
Yeah, Leo gave me one when I was down at the Cigar Heritage Festival because I just come back from coffee, had nothing to eat. She's like, "You want a cigar?" I was like, "Yeah, why not?" Empty stomach. She's like, "Here, try this," and I was like, "That was great."
Fantastic stuff. One thing that I did find in the news world is, so I'm still trying to get all the pieces to this, but the basics is apparently the New Orleans Pelicans guard J.J. Redick started within the NBA bubble. He started a wine club amongst his fellow NBA players. Have either of you heard about this?
No, but JJ Redick's the friggin' man. You know he's also a rapper.
I think I've heard that.
And
Yeah.
And he went to Duke. So he went to the most stereotypical white basketball program in the entire country.
I know you're forgetting BYU.
And yeah, yes, true. Not to bring religion into this, but that's the Mormons. So
That's where I'm from, man.
Yeah. So I mean, it is what it is. But JJ Redick's a rapper. The guy is an absolute stud in the basketball court. He's a perfect example of being a great shooter and how that gets you in the NBA because he's not a big guy, but he's not small. But he's having a great job in the NBA bubble. I did not hear about the wine club, but one comment on the bubble is I was watching. I'm a huge NBA fan, massive. I was watching it the other day. I probably watched 25 games. This is the first time I haven't had the NBA on in weeks, a week and a half since it started. They were talking about how they didn't have much to do. They're like, oh, there's just not much for these players to do. The NBA stocked the lakes at Disney with fish so they could go fishing. So like they can fish, golf, go to the parks and ride on rides, dinners, all this different stuff. JJ Redick's got a wine thing going on. Who knows what else is going on? They're staying in nice resorts, even though some people didn't like it or whatever. But they said there wasn't much to do, and I was like, that sounds like so much to do on top of actually doing your job and playing basketball.
Right.
I'm like, they have so much going on. So I didn't hear about the wine club, but I think the NBA's product right now, I know some people have political views on it. I think they're excellent. I think the NBA is the best COVID sport going on right now. Hockey is really good too. But basketball is something special, deserving of a wine club run by JJ Redick.
Yeah, ESPN put a story out about how, when they got to the I sent you the link. They got to the bubble and they got up to their hotel rooms and they were all getting situated. This was at the beginning, and apparently he just started looking at the wine menu, and he was looking at all the wines they had available, and they had a good selection. And I guess from the little bit that I read, I mean, I guess he started getting wine and drinking wine, and I think that they're connecting with each other after the game, and they're sharing a glass of wine like over the computer or whatnot. And the title ESPN put it out. It's called Inside the NBA Bubble's Unofficial Wine Club. And I just thought that was interesting because wine is also a frequent topic on this show, and of course the NBA. And I just thought, wow, what a great little pairing right there. No pun intended.
Carney, you need to send him some bottles of wine with some LFDs and see if they can get a cigar club going too.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. See, this is why we have people like Scott on the show. Yeah, I
Go on.
mean,
It's interesting. I was doing just a little reading on it, and the reason he got into it is because he just was noticing that there wasn't a lot of good wines, that there wasn't wines he wanted. So he's like, I got to get some of these wines sent in. I just read that he had a wine cooler shipped to his room, and he's got all these different wines.
Let's clarify. It's an actual fridge for his wine to go in. He didn't order bottles and James to his room. That's not the kind of club he's got going on.
No. But yeah, it's cool. I find the bubble. One, it's not really a bubble, but it's it's a confined environment, it's a controlled environment. They haven't had a lot of cases of COVID, which has been huge because they're in close proximity with each other, spitting, sweating, and bleeding on each other. I said the NBA is doing it right, and I said there's a lot of haters on the NBA. There's a lot of haters on sports now because of political and social stuff, which everybody has their rights to their opinions. I just want to watch the game. I love sports. I love basketball. I love football. I have personal opinions on certain things, what I would do if I was in one of those environments. But it's just a great product, and there's a lot of cool stuff coming out of the NBA, and I think this is a big thing for them, and it's a good win. And I think they're definitely got a system that really works, and that's a testament to Adam Silver, their commissioner. The NBA's had great commissioners over the last 25, 30 years, and Adam Silver did a great job. And you know what? The big thing was they listened to the players. They did get the players' opinions involved, and the players were not just part of it in a small level of listening and getting opinions. The Players Association was an integral part of it. They helped mold what was going to happen, and it's a testament to the execution they have is a testament to when you do include all the people that are involved in a situation and get everybody's points of views, you can get some stuff done in challenging times, and I think that's a model that people could watch and see. And it's unique with basketball because there's also less players than other sports teams, and whatnot. And it's a close knit group. It just happens to be a big organization, but they got something done that the other sports are struggling with. Like baseball is struggling right now.
Yeah, baseball.
One, baseball is brutal when there's no fans. It's a long game, and two, they're just having issues with teams with COVID and. Whether they're symptomatic or not, they said people testing positive. There's been a lot of challenges with it, and basketball has done it right. It's just a really good product.
So, two comments. First, Carney killed it on the court last year at the trade show. He was a beast out there. He didn't care. His shirt was untucked. He was out there playing against Thiago and Dominique Wilkins. So I had a great time. The second one is I love baseball. I played it all the way up. I played it a little bit in college and everything. And so I love baseball. I don't watch it as much as I probably used to. But your comment there about it's brutal without fans, it just reminds me of that Simpsons episode where Homer quits drinking beer for a month. And he goes to the baseball game and it's just dull and dead. And everyone around him is just pounding beers. And he's looking around and he goes, "Oh, I never realized how boring this game is without beer." That your comment reminded me about that.
Yeah, that's it's definitely a weird feeling in Major League Baseball. They have the cardboard cutouts in some of the stadiums. Some of them have it, some of them don't. Some of them have it like in some areas. Some of them have like half the stadium full. The little bit that I've heard and I've understood was, the Marlins outbreak was the Cardinals, the Marlins. Apparently, a lot of that was just the players not really following the protocol. They were going out to places they should not have been going to, not really following the game plan. Then you have an outbreak, games get shut down. I mean, this is how you ruin the little bit of baseball that, you made such a stink over, you wanted all your money for, and then you have this little window to play, and you're not going to follow the rules. And I think Carney's right in terms of, like, the NBA bubble. They've done a pretty good job with it, and they've put out a good product. The players seem to be, following along with it now. There hasn't been any major outbreaks. You look at MLB, they just, they went through their whole thing, publicly shamed themselves with the money thing, And like, they already have like 3 or 4 teams now that have outbreaks. I mean, it's just like and then now here's the other thing. It's the beginning of August now. We're looking down the barrel at another season, the football season, and the NFL, and you have players from a good amount of players from the New England Patriots have already opted out and say, I'm not playing. We're not even at the NFL season yet, and now there's who the hell's going to show up? Now
I want to say something controversial before we get into the NFL here real quick. One of the comments that I've seen online, and social media is such a disease. It's awful. The benefits of it are far outweighed by the negative sides of it. And one of the biggest things I saw, obviously everybody's concerned with what's going on with the national anthem. And I respect everyone's point of view on the national anthem on either side. And how they want to represent themselves. That's the freedom that they have. Whether it's right or wrong is not necessarily for anyone else to determine. We can have opinions on that, and that's fine. In your opinion, people's opinions on it are fine either way. But one of the biggest comments that I saw online is people that want to say, "Oh, I'm not going to watch the NBA because they're making a big political stance, this and that." We have a social movement, whether you feel it's justified or not, around a minority group of black people in our country. And the NBA is a group of black athletes, majority of our black athletes. If you're tuning into the NBA and you're expecting there not to be a social statement made about something that's going on with black people in our country, what are you tuning in for? Because I see people tuning in and they're like, well, I can't believe they're wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts. What were you expecting when you tuned in? I'm not going to watch the NBA because of this. You have the right to do that, and I have no issue with people making their own decisions. But if you tune into that, people ask me, like, how do you tune into it? I tune into it because that's what I went in expecting. Why would you expect something different? And again, we must listen to other people, and those people must also listen back. And I think the biggest thing that was said, and this is why I brought this up, was Charles Barkley, who I called him Charles Broccoli by mistake the other day, a text message with a friend, my mother actually. Charles Broccoli brought up a great point. He said, it's very important that we understand that when someone kneels for the national anthem, that they're expressing their view or their opinion and their right to express what they want to express in that moment. But he said it's also very important, too, which I think is important for these people, and I'm going to bring this full circle, because it's also important, too, not to vilify the people that are standing for the national anthem, because that's also what they believe. So when somebody's expressing their freedoms, whether we agree with them or disagree, and I'll be on the record, is I think people ought to stand for the national anthem. That's just something that I personally feel. But I respect their right to do that, and I also would expect them to respect my right to stand up. But we also have to respect their different points of views. And even though it's at the workplace or it's entertainment, there's nowhere in the world right now, especially here in the United States, there's nowhere on the planet where nobody's making some sort of a political statement or making some sort of a social statement, and they have the freedom to do that, and it's going to happen at the workplace, and we must be acceptable. We must respect those people's points of view, even if they're making that point of view in their workspace. Trying to damage someone because they stood up for their beliefs is not what we're based on in our country, and you shouldn't have to hide that. And I thought Charles Broccoli brought that up really well, and I thought that was a great point. And for me, watching the NBA, that's why I watch it, because I'm respecting other people's points of view, whether I agree with them or not, and I'm enjoying the game and I'm enjoying the sport.
It's pretty well said. It's respectable. I always appreciate the insight from Carney, especially on the sports. We always have good sports talk. Especially when it comes to the NBA. I call Carney our kind of, he might disagree with this, but I kind of like to refer to him as our resident NBA expert. And I know he's going to say
there's only two of you, so all he's got to know is this much more than you, and he's the expert.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like outrunning a bear. I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the whole there's a lot going on with, the political aspect of sports, and there's been a lot of comments. I'm a NASCAR fan. I actually was at the Foxwoods 301 on Sunday up here in New Hampshire, and that was a great event, and I'm glad we were able to actually go to that race and see that. And they've had their own political standpoints. all sports are doing the Black Lives Matter thing. The NASCAR community has banned the Confederate flag because obviously the NASCAR is really big in the South, and down in the South the Confederate flag was still very prominent, and they banned that at all events, and they've gotten political on the races, and you go in the NASCAR thing, and I don't get into it with people, but I do read the comments, and you see people going, well, I'm not watching NASCAR anymore because X, Y, and Z. I'm not watching it anymore. And every week it's the same people going, oh, I'm sure the race was great, but I'm not watching. It's like, all right, well then why are you even here commenting? It's like if you're not gonna be involved in NASCAR because of your beliefs, then just be done with it. Why do people? It's the social media thing too. People go on there and they just like to comment and they make their things that they.
Well, I love watching people who say they don't care about something care about it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to watch the NBA. Then don't. Like, don't do it. Don't watch it.
But
That's
every
fine.
week they're going to go on the NBA Facebook and they go, I'm not watching NBA. All right, well then what are you doing here?
Well, I'll offer you a different perspective since you are open to different perspectives. All entertainment, sports, whatever else, the social contract they have with the people and what people are paying to consume is sports entertainment, and it's generally been an arena free from political statements. It's not the platform. The athletes don't have that arena as a political platform. They're not being paid to come out and to pontificate or preach to us about social things. That's not what they have heretofore been recognized as such, right? There are political pundits that are out there that people listen to. Whether or not I think they should is irrelevant. So now it's changed for folks, right? And folks don't share that. And so oftentimes if they're saying things that you don't agree with and you're coming to it and you're saying, okay, it's the actual arena. Now, if there are athletes that have voices outside of that arena, absolutely. Your ability and celebrity and so I think that's probably people's frustration is that if you're coming to a platform that and you want as sports entertainment as a spectator, and that's been the social contract and interaction with that entertainment up until this point, to now have it switched on you and the very arena or the very field is now being used as a platform to express and not have a dialogue, but you're being and talked at as opposed to discussed with. I think their platform then and their outlet then is very much social media. And I always say social media, the best thing to happen to give everything, well, social media, the good thing is now everybody has a voice, but the bad thing about social media is that everybody has a voice, right? And so it's that give and take, that two-way street. And I think that's the problem is that social media and this entire interaction that people have, it's still very nascent for folks. And so people are still trying to figure out even how to communicate with each other, even verbally face to face, let alone via this whole social where you can't really have a dialogue. It's just, I'm going to yell and I'm going to listen to everybody that agrees with me because I want to feel vindicated in my beliefs. And most people don't find a whole lot of absolution in their rational point of views. And so it creates these hollow echo chambers for people. And that's the biggest challenge with social media is that all it does is perpetuate those echo chambers rather than actual dialogue. And you have on that one side. And then again, if you're coming to watch a sport and being preached at, people can choose whether or not they go to church because they want to be preached at. And if they've generally been going to sports because they want to watch and cheer for their team, and now they feel like they're being preached at, that's where it's going to devolve to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's well said, and that's a good point. And it's great to get another perspective and a different point of view on these topics. Me and Carney, here every week and saying our same shit to each other every week. But no, it's nice. It's nice to have someone else who has a different perspective, a different point of view, and that's important.
As John and I were talking beforehand, though, is that, we and I were talking about, discussions and debates and stuff. And I may not necessarily even agree with whatever it is I'm saying. I just like to always offer an opposing point of view because 100%. I feel like when you have the give and take and discussions, it helps. Because if everybody's always agreeing with each other, it goes right back to those echo chambers I talked about. So just offering a perspective that just psychologically, right, of kind of how that all works. At least I'm not a trained psychologist, but that's just the way.
I agree with you. I had a discussion today with a friend of mine. You and I were talking about it earlier, and I was discussing with her, and I challenge her on discussions just because a lot of the time, most of the people I'm dealing with during the day, especially my team, agree with what I'm saying because they either one work for me or two, I'm agreeing with what the people that work for me that I work for want. And fortunately, I've been successful in my job because the people I work for, we tend to agree on things. So the people below with me agree with me because I paid them to do that. So I said, I go, most of the people I interact with agree with what I say. I push back on things because I honestly respect the disagreement. And I also want to challenge it back at the same time. because that's where you actually form great thoughts and great opportunities through that open discussion. That's why I said I advise people to respect, and they can do what they want, but I advise them to respect the other points of view, because I think that's ultimately what will bring people together. And it's really idealistic to say that, but it is like that's what brings people together in person. And as we mature and change as a society where it becomes more virtual, more open, something's got to give. Like there's got to be a point where it just can't keep escalating, and it won't. And that's through understanding and working together.
So, gentlemen,
while smoking a cigar.
So, gentlemen, unfortunately, we have reached the end of this program. We are getting ready to wrap up the show tonight. But before we do sign off, I want to throw it to each of you. Scott, we'll start with you. Any last closing remarks before we end the show?
First, thank you very much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for the soap review. It's good to know that we're using a 7.9 Carney approved and rated soap in the office, so that was good. I believe it's the exact same one, honestly, with the lavender scent, so that's good. I think we got it to keep the scorpions away, but everything else, clean hands, everything else. But no, lastly, for anybody listening, cigaraction.org is where all of our advocacy efforts work, particularly with consumers. If you sign up there and put your address information in anytime, we're reaching out to officials in your area. If there's any kind of initiative we have in your locale, you'll be notified, and we have template letters that we get ready for you to send off to your elected officials. Be notified maybe even if we're having events at local tobacconists in your area with the elected officials and things like that. So cigaraction.org, please go, please sign up. For all you consumers out there, it really helps us amplify our message.
Well said.
And it's a super easy thing to do. As I said last night on Sick Man Show, like this is a great time for consumers. We always say get involved. This is a chance to get involved. It's an easy thing to do and go sign up for these newsletters. It's so easy. Go to cigaraction.org, get it done. And while you're at it, go to hackinggourmet.com because hackinggourmet.com will be Planet of the Apps on Monday. We're returning to 5 p.m. It will be Brian McGee and myself cooking. Fred is in someplace in the country. He'll be remote, but Hacking Gourmet, 5 p.m. on Monday, Planet of the Apps. Looking forward to a good time, and should be a good August on the show.
Well said. Thank you guys both for joining us. Scott, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And as always, it's been another great show. Guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're out there on wherever you can find your podcast, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Pandora, thank you for listening. Check us out on YouTube at Smoking Tobacco, Instagram, Facebook, Smoking Tobacco. You can find us everywhere, and as always at smokingtobacco.com. It has been a great show, and I will catch you guys all later. Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.